Coming up next on Living on the Edge.
What a statement. Everyone on the side of the truth listens to me. I guess despite how gray the world has become, at least according to Jesus, who died and rose from the dead, you're either on the side of truth or you're not.
Welcome to Living on the Edge. Hi, I'm Chip Ingram. Did you ever wonder if your life was meant to be more than it is? I mean, to be better, to be bigger, to be more impactful. Like you were born for something that you haven't quite found yet. I like to suggest that your life was meant to be something great and that you have the opportunity to have an amazing impact. The question is how? How do you live the kind of life like that? You want to find out? Stay with me. That's today on Living on the Edge.
And during this time now, Peter, who was willing to die, who chopped off a guy's ear because he missed his head, he supernaturally, one of the other gospel writers tells us that Jesus heals the ear, and we pick up the story in verse 15. Simon Peter and another disciple were following Jesus because this disciple was known to the high priest. He went with Jesus into the high priest's courtyard, but Peter had to wait outside the door. The other disciple, who was known to the high priest, came back, spoke to the girl on duty there, and brought Peter in. "Surely you are not another of this man's disciples," the girl at the door asked Peter. He replied, "I am not." It was cold, and the servants and officials stood around a fire that they made to keep warm, and Peter was also standing with them, warming himself. You pick it up in the English, but the phrasing here in the Greek is she's asking a question expecting a negative answer. This happens to us sometimes too. It's like, you're not one of those evangelicals, are you? You're not one of those people that actually really believe in the Bible and that Jesus, was a literal person and raised from the dead, do you? Now, and by the way, this is so interesting that God would allow us. It's such a God-given book, because no one writing a book to start something would ever allow the leaders to look like this. Moments ago, he would take on 200 trained Roman soldiers, and now circumstances have changed, and a servant girl just asked a question. You're certainly not one of his followers, are you? And what's Peter say? He was courageous, and now he's a coward. No, I'm not. We pick up the story. It continues. The high priest begins to question Jesus, verse 19. Meanwhile, the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and about his teaching. Now, notice Jesus' focus in his response is going to go back to how openly he testified, how openly he shared and taught. And what he's going to call on them to do is do what? Bring witnesses in who heard my teaching. Let them testify about what's true and what I spoke. When Jesus said this, he said, "I've always taught in the synagogue and in the temple where all the Jews came together. I said nothing in secret. Why question me? Ask those who heard me. Surely they knew what I said." When Jesus said this, one of the officials nearby struck him in the face. "Is that the way to answer the high priest?" he demanded. Now, notice the theme the author keeps bringing up. "If I said something wrong," Jesus replied, "testify as to what is wrong. But if I spoke the truth, why did you strike me?" Then Annas sent him still to be bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. Are you catching the drift? Are you catching and realizing there's a series of people, and the issue is, how do they testify to the truth? Are they courageous or are they cowardly? Verse 25, as Simon Peter stood warming himself, he was asked, "Surely you're not another of his disciples?" And he denied it, saying, "I am not." One of the high priest's servants, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, challenged him. "Well, didn't I see you with him in the Olive Garden?" Again, Peter denied it. And at that moment, a rooster crowed as prophesied 3 times. And by the way, the other gospel writers, a little bit more graphic. Peter doesn't just say, "No, it wasn't me." He says, "Blankety blank blank, I don't know the guy." He actually curses and completely disowns any relationship with Jesus. And this is the same guy that was willing to die an hour or two or three before. The scene shifts now, and verse 38, then the Jews led Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. By now it was early morning, and to avoid the ceremonial uncleanness, the Jews did not enter the palace. They wanted to be able to take the Passover. So it's okay to have 3 illegal trials. This is the irony of religion, and we have to all look in the mirror. The irony is that they want to make sure they're ceremonially clean to take over the Passover, but they do 3 illegal trials and are going to kill an innocent man because they claim to be God and love people, raise people from the dead. What are the charges you bring against this man, Pilate says. Well, if he were not a criminal, they replied, we wouldn't have handed him over to you. Pilate said, take him yourself and judge him by your own laws. Well, we have no right to execute anyone, the Jews objected. This happened so that the words of Jesus that had been spoken indicating the kind of death he was going to die would be fulfilled. Pilate went back inside and summoned Jesus and asked him, are you the king of the Jews? Is that your own idea, Jesus asked, or did you talk to others about me? Do you think I'm a Jew? Pilate replied. It was your people and your chief priests who handed you over to me. What is it that you have done? Testimony. Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jews. But now my kingdom is from another place. You are a king then, said Pilate. Jesus answered, testifying again. You were right in saying, I am a king. In fact, for this reason I was born, and for this I came into the world to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me. What is truth? Pilate asked. And with this, he went out again to the Jews and said, notice it's an examination by a government official. Here's his testimony. I find no basis for a charge against him. But it's your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at this time of year at the Passover. Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews? They shouted back, no, not him. Give us Barabbas. Now Barabbas had taken part in a rebellion and actually had committed murder. So these guys that don't want to be ceremonially unclean so they can take the Passover want a murderer to get off, an innocent man to die. Do you see? Cowards, courageous. And Jesus testifying to the truth and making this climactic statement about his entire life purpose. And by the way, that is our call, to testify to the truth. What's true about God? What's true about us? What's true about the world? What's true about the future? What a statement. Everyone on the side of the truth listens to me. I guess despite how gray the world has become, at least according to Jesus, who died and rose from the dead, you're either on the side of truth or you're not. Now, what I want to do, because I think the fact is that all of us are courageous at times and all of us are cowardice at times. And I'd like to dig a little bit to find out why. What made these people do what they did? Because I want to know why I do what I do. I mean, I sort of want to know. Part of me doesn't want to know. But I'll never be courageous if I don't realize there's certain things that are predictors of making you and me cowards in our life. And as our theologian told us, we start in innocence and then we go on a march through temptation and either end up with a life of virtue or one of vice, depending on actually how you respond to the truth. Now, you're going to have to get your fingers ready, and I'm going to ask you to look up a couple passages because I don't want you to hear me say something. I want you to open and look and read and go, oh. Lessons from John 18. Lesson number 1 is a question. What kept Judas and Annas from listening to the truth in Jesus? And the answer is greed. Annas was making a fortune. Judas probably had a lot of mixed motives, but it was for 30 pieces of silver. It's what you could buy a slave for. I'm going to ask you to open your Bibles to Luke chapter 16, because I want you to hear Jesus' actual commentary. Greed's a powerful thing. It's something we all wrestle and struggle with. But Annas and Judas did not listen to the truth because of greed. Have you found it? Luke chapter 16, I'm going to begin at verse 14. The Pharisees, the religious leaders, who were lovers of money, heard all these things that Jesus was teaching, and they ridiculed him. Here's Jesus' response. And he said to them, "You are those who justify yourselves before men, but God knows your heart. For that which is highly esteemed among men, money, power, position, and stuff that comes with it. That which is highly esteemed among men is detestable in the sight of God." Question that I ask myself and I ask you, is your testimony hindered because it could have implications for your career? Are you less than bold at work? Are you less than upfront? Are you less than verbal? Are you unwilling to be unashamed to be a follower of Christ? Because if you are, that might really hurt your chances for a promotion. Or you might be viewed differently at work. Or the fact of the matter is your life so busy working to make money to finally get to buy a house here or to, you name it, that really you don't have much of a testimony. Your life really isn't very different. Fact is, you have a lot of debt. You have an untamed schedule. Your life is dictated by demands. And you would never call yourself greedy, but the unconscious pursuit of what you think it's required here in the Silicon Valley has, by that pattern, dismissed you as being a person who is identified, loving, holy, caring, different in the best sense of the word, follower of Jesus. It was true of them, and it can be true of us.
You're watching Living on the Edge with Chip Ingram. Chip will be back with the rest of his message in just a minute. If you're new to us, Living on the Edge is an international teaching and discipleship ministry dedicated to helping Christians really live like Christians. Now, to enjoy more of Chip's teaching, download the free Chip Ingram app, available at Google Play or the App Store. Now, here's Chip with the rest of today's talk.
I've had the chance over the years to hire a few people out of the business world to take very significant positions, and they're so well equipped, especially in the areas that most pastors aren't trained, like Virendra. And this has been a 2 or 3 year conversation with him because I had sensed God working in his life, and he's got kids in college, and chief operating officers in the Silicon Valley make quite a bit more than executive pastors. So my conversations usually start something like, "I have an amazing, downwardly mobile opportunity for you." I'm dead serious. And what I want you to know is that I can't probably pay you even close to what you're making. But if God, in fact, is leading and calling you to do this, you will have untold reward. And you will be rich in ways that all the money in the world could never satisfy. Now, I'm not saying at all that you need to come out of the business world. I'm just saying that one of the big things he had to really ask himself is, am I willing to trust God from lots and lots of zeros behind my name and what I've made to be an executive pastor? I have a couple friends in the business world that, a lot of people, we're in the Silicon Valley. If you're really open about your Christianity, you're really bold, there's no upward mobility, God can never, it won't work. Well, ask Kurt Perry that. He's the president of new branding at Google. And in the most loving, winsome way, he is out there. Pat Gelsinger's another very close friend. And on the one hand, you wonder, how does that guy get away with it? He is so bold. Well, I think all the Intel chips, up until I think in another year they've developed another one, Pat developed all the Intel chips. He was like 18, working part-time, and created and designed some of those early chips. The dude is really brilliant, like scary smart. And he was torn because he asked God, he felt like there was a call to be a pastor. And he wrestled and wrestled and wrestled. And he had a very wise pastor give him counsel. Well, what do you think God's calling you to do? And he came to, I'm to be a pastor in the business world. When you talk to him, he'll talk about, I don't know how many thousands of employees. He says, I'm the senior pastor of VMware. Now, the fact that he does really well gives him a pretty good platform. But boy, the moment he makes a mistake, he's living in a very high risk, but gospel high reward world. All I want to say is, greed will make you and me a coward. We will run from the opportunity. We'll be afraid of what people think. Courage is stepping out and being bold, even when it feels dangerous, or you receive criticism, or be viewed as anti-intellectual, or a Bible thumper, or one of those even prejudiced people. The second reason or lesson from John 18 is what kept the religious leaders from listening to the truth in Jesus. And the answer is pride, power, and position. Pride, power, and position. I'd like you, if you will, to open to John chapter 12. Just move back from John 18. John chapter 12. Again, I want you to hear the actual gospel writers. I want you to look at it for yourself. Verse 42 says, nevertheless, many of the authorities believed in him, but for fear of the Pharisees, they did not confess it, so that they would not be put out of the synagogue. For they loved the glory that comes from man more than the glory that comes from God. I've met people in the business world where some of what I know, people who really, really walk with God, and I've had people say, I had no idea he was a Christian. I had no idea she was a Christian. Well, I knew that they were a high integrity person, and I knew they worked hard. There's a lot of people that have high integrity and work hard, but they mortgaged their there was no testimony. There's no testimony. We got almost 8 million people in the greater Bay Area, and less than 5% of them even go to a church, let alone a Bible-believing church. The only way they're going to hear is you and me. And the pride of what people think, or the sense of loss of power or position. My question for you and me, is your testimony hindered because of social pressure and how you're afraid people will look at you? It's one of those take it to God, honest questions. The third lesson is what kept Peter and Pilate from listening to the truth in Jesus. Well, it takes a little historical research with Pilate, and all I will tell you is that he made a handful of bad decisions, and the emperor at the time was dealing with some other things, and he went on sort of a long vacation, and he put one of his commanders in charge of Rome. And this commander, after a season, decided that he was going to try and marry into the royal family, and that made the emperor think, I think he's after my job, so he came back, had him executed. And then anybody that he appointed as an official, he started going through and had them executed. Well, Pilate was one of the guys that was appointed by this guy. And so when the Jews say, hey, anybody who has this king of the Jews is no friend of Caesar's, Pilate's going, you know what, this is easy. I can't handle one bad PR here, because all they have to say is, and the Jews talk to the emperor. It was fear. Peter was afraid. Weird, isn't it? He wasn't afraid when there's 200 soldiers and he's standing next to Jesus, but a servant girl and he's sitting next to, he's afraid. Moment of truth. Are you one of his followers? Do you follow him? This is like what ISIS people are doing right now around the world. Are you one of his followers? Yes, your head comes off. No, you can go. It's happened historically. This isn't hypothetical stuff. Peter goes, no. He ran. He was a coward. You know the root word, you know where we get our word coward? From the Latin word for tail. It's a picture of when an animal puts its tail between its legs and runs away from a predator of more power. And he was overwhelmed with grief. Final lesson is what empowered Peter to listen to the truth in Jesus initially. I mean, I don't know about you, but those greed, power, position, fear, I get all those. The fear of man is a snare, Proverbs 29:25 says. But blessed is he who trusts in the Lord. At the end of the day, isn't it faith? Do I trust God for my position? Do I trust God with my money? Do I trust God with what people think of me? See, we won't testify unless we're people of faith. And I'm not saying it's easy, but courage is choosing to do or say what we know is right when we are frightened and concerned about what could happen. But this is a positive lesson. What empowered Peter to listen to the truth initially? The answer is Jesus' presence and power. Right? I mean, there's 200 soldiers, but there's Jesus. There's 200 soldiers, but he speaks, they all fall down. There's 200 soldiers, but my bros are here. You know, we're in this together. There's 10 of us here. Not that the 10 are going to win, but isn't it amazing that just with a few people around you, that our faith rubs up against one another, and just doing life in community in a way, we take steps together, and as I hear about what you do and what she does, that it empowers me to step out. And I'm sure you guys think, oh yeah, Chip, you know, that you never have any problems with this, you're a pastor, and you're so passionate up here, and blah, 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 blah. I was doing the funeral for Teresa's dad, and you know, every culture has their different way of doing it. Imagine Appalachia. I mean, really just Appalachia. I mean, like these places exist in America. This is where we're at. There's this little funeral home, and there's this big open area, and a little alcove, and there's a coffin, and it lids up, and there's Fred. You know, not much of him. You know, he got really lost all this weight, but just so for 4 hours, different people are coming in. And there's a dead body there. And I don't know Teresa's family, and we're going to go to the graveside, and her two sisters and their family, and then some other relatives and other people. And so for 4 hours, I'm kind of building relationship and realizing, I mean, I felt like a missionary trying to figure out, oh my gosh, I don't know how life works here. And little by little, I felt like God was giving me favor, and I was kind of connecting, and then it's time to go to the graveside, and Teresa and her sister said, please, make sure, in our whole family situation, there's a lot of people that don't know the Lord. There's a lot of people that are not on their way to heaven. We need you to really winsomely, really share the gospel. And I remember I went out to the car, and, you know, we're getting ready because, you know, they're putting the body in the thing, and we're going to go to the graveside. And I remember just sitting in the car and thinking, I've met these people. This is so awkward. And I just had this overwhelming sense of fear. And it was like, I mean, it's illogical. Like, what are they going to think of me? And, you know, it's really small. Actually, the larger the group, the easier it is to be bold. Give me thousands of people. you know, give me 15 or 17. It's like, you know, I mean, there's... And then I went out to the car, and it was like, I mean, I can share the gospel, but not really go to where you bring a person to a decision, and, you know, you sort of, And I would have been a coward. And I sat in the car alone, just reviewing my little message, just saying, God, it will not matter what any of these people think of me. This may be the only time ever they hear the gospel clearly. And so I need to share it, and then I need to let them know exactly how to trust Christ, and then I need to give them the opportunity. This is what you need to do today if you never have. I don't think courage is being an amazing person. I think courage is stepping out regardless of your fear. And here's what I would remind you, the power of your testimony. Revelation 12:11, it's talking about overcoming Satan and spiritual strongholds. And it says, and they overcame him, and in the context, it's Satan. How? What's it say? They overcame him because of the blood of the Lamb and because of the word of their testimony, and they did not love their life even when faced with death. I want you to know, you telling your story, you openly, God is working all over. You being bold in these next 2 weeks and in the future. God is doing something fresh in our church to fulfill what he wants to do in the world that's been crazy, and he's going to use regular people like us to testify courageously and not be cowards. And it's powerful.
Every single person, when God begins to work, it's because people step up. They begin to lead. And we're always looking for someone else, but it's you, it's me. It's your testimony at work and in your home, with your friends. Here's my question. Are you willing to take the lead and not allow greed or pride or fear to keep you from testifying about God's goodness and his mercy? I do know it's a little scary, but I have a friend in California. He's the CEO of one of the top 15 tech companies in all the world. He is the boldest Christian I know. And where I live, if you really go public with your faith, believe me, a lot of persecution can happen. But there's an interesting thing about my friend Pat. Pat not only is very bold, he not only called me and 2 or 3 other Christian leaders and started a movement in the Bay Area called Transform the Bay. But because he's bold, I've watched other leaders all throughout the high-tech industry be bold as well. And here's what I want you to know. Your fellow Christians, your kids, your wife, your roommate, as you step out and are bold, you know what it does? It inspires the rest of us. So here's my prayer. Father, right now, I pray for every person listening to my voice that you will give us the courage to overcome our fear and to boldly, winsomely, and lovingly share our relationship with Christ. You know, you don't have to preach to people, but if you identify with him, let people know who you are, what you believe, and why. God will really use you. Let's go for it.
How do you move from knowing about God to actually experiencing his presence? Chip's book, Finding God When You Need Him Most, brings you face to face with God in the midst of life's most trying circumstances. The God you encounter has the power and comfort you need when a relationship fails, when a crisis overwhelms, or when injustice paralyzes. This book brings home the truth that no matter what, God is absolutely faithful to hear your heart's cry and is ready to meet you every time you call. To order your copy of Finding God When You Need Him Most, simply head over to our website, livingontheedge.tv. That's livingontheedge.tv. While you're there, check out the other individual and small group resources. That's livingontheedge.tv.